Hello Star Wars fans, and welcome to episode 81 of Journey into Legends. Today we'll be reading Agents of Chaos 1, Hero's Trial by James Luceno. Hero's Trial was released in 2000, and it is the fourth book in the New Jedi Order series, and the first of the Agents of Chaos duology. I'm really excited to get into my first ever James Luceno novel, and after two books of teasing us, I'm excited to get an in-depth look at Han's grieving of Chewbacca. Without further ado, let's read and review. After the last few books, Han finally returns to the story in a major way, and we finally get to see how he's been dealing with the death of Chewbacca. And we got some really great scenes with him, such as Chewbacca's funeral, his forgiveness of Anakin, as well as a great scene of him boarding the Falcon and reliving a lot of his greatest memories with Chewie and everyone else. It was really interesting to see Han struggle to move on with his life, with him even meeting a new potential co-pilot named Droma. Another fascinating little side plot from this book was its exploration of 3PO's grief regarding Chewie's death. There's a great scene from Chewie's funeral where 3PO relives memories of Chewie, and he experiences an unexpected random flutter, and his processing begins to slow, and he slowly realizes that he's actually feeling sad for Chewie. This scene, as well as 3PO's continued pondering about deactivation, or a droid's version of death, were really unique and a really nice touch. This book introduced a really interesting concept, a new faction called the Peace Brigade, which are a group of smugglers, mercenaries, and others that actually align themselves with the Vong and harbor anti-Jedi sentiments. During the events of this book, Han is approached by an old friend of his, Roa, who's a character from both Han Solo trilogies. Han and Roa set out to find a smuggler named Rek Desh, who's believed to be a member of the Peace Brigade. I find the Peace Brigade a really interesting concept, and I'm really excited to see more of them, hopefully in the next book. Along with the Peace Brigade, we also meet some new Yuuzhan Vong villains, who are very unique to the ones we've encountered so far. Unlike warriors like Yeoman Kar and Shadao Shai, this book introduces a different kind of Vong, that of Harar and Elan of the Priest caste, who are also working with Nomenor. The whole book centers around Harar's scheme to have Elan and Vergir, who's basically Elan's aide, pretend to defect to the New Republic and assassinate as many Jedi as she can with a bioweapon. And I really enjoy this whole plotline, whether it was New Republic intelligence's efforts to interrogate Elan and keep her from the Yuuzhan Vong's grasp, or the Peace Brigade's efforts to rescue her and return her to the Vong, not knowing that the Vong don't intend to rescue her. And of course, it was great to see Elan's plan fail completely as Han outsmarts her and she ends up killing herself with the biological weapon. I also found Vergir really interesting. I do know she becomes a much more important character later on. I don't know the specifics of that, but what was teased in this book really intrigues me, such as the revelation that she may be from this galaxy, as well as that her relationship with the Vong may have been a ruse. I don't know what to expect from her character, and I don't know when she'll pop up next, since she managed to escape at the end of this book, but either way, my interest has been piqued. So overall, this was definitely the weakest of the New Jedi Order series so far. I enjoyed a lot of the concepts and characters that were introduced, such as the Peace Brigade, Harar, Vergir, Elan, and Droma. I also really liked how the book mostly focused on Han, so Luke, Leia, and the kids didn't really factor into the story as much, so it felt like we're almost seeing the war from the perspective of these smaller corners of the galaxy. I also really enjoyed all of the references to other EU material. James Luceno really lives up to his reputation as the lore master of the expanded universe. There were a bunch of references to the Brian Daly books. There were also a ton of returning minor characters from books like Planet of Twilight and the Black Fleet Crisis, which contributed to that feeling that we're seeing different perspectives to the war. But overall, like I said, this book was my least favorite so far. I just don't think it manages to reach the same heights as the previous books, and I don't think the storylines were nearly as interesting. Alright, next let's move on to Star Wars Tales issue number 6, which has 6 stories. Starting with The Hovel on Terk Street, which follows Greedo as he's hired to find a rebel sympathizer on Tatooine. Overall, this was an average story, but it was fun to see Greedo again. That's a constant I've noticed with a lot of these Tales stories. They're very average and forgettable, except that they tend to hide that by using a rarely used character, which makes it a little more fun. Anyways, our next story is called A Hot Time in the Cold Town Tonight, which follows the Max Rebo Band as they're sent to Hoth by Jabba to perform for one of his friends. In reality, Jabba has set these speakers to explode, and to survive, the band set up holograms to perform as they make their escape. Once again, this is yet another silly story, probably non-canon, and I didn't care for it at all. Next, we've got Fortune, Fate, and the Natural History of the Sarlacc, which features the birth of the Sarlacc and follows it through its lifespan all the way to Return of the Jedi. And I really enjoyed this one, mainly because the art was really great. This was just a really fun one to look at, but also, I just enjoyed the story and getting to see the life of a Sarlacc. Our next story is called Junkheap Hero, which is another stupid, non-canon 3PO and R2 story. In this one, R2 is taken by Imperials on Tatooine, and Luke saves him. Like I said, this one was stupid. Next, we've got a story called The Hidden, which is a short little story about an Imperial probe droid sent to Dagobah that gets destroyed by Yoda, and the Imperial officer stupidly brushes it off and elects not to tell Vader about it, which obviously saved Yoda from detection. This is a pretty fun one. It's cool to see that Yoda was very close to being found by the Empire. I also really loved the art in this one. And finally, our last story is called Thank the Maker, an absolutely phenomenal story set during The Empire Strikes Back. This story follows Vader as he comes across the destroyed parts of C-3PO, and old childhood memories of building the droid come back to him. This was such a fantastic idea for a story, and it was so fascinating to see Vader just for a moment remember his childhood, 3PO, and his mother. This type of story is what I wish we got more of from Star Wars Tales and the EU in general. This was just phenomenal. Overall, this was a great issue. I liked the Greedo, Sarlacc, and Yoda stories, and I absolutely loved the last story. The others were bad, but I don't really care. The good certainly outweighed the bad this time, and this issue was really good. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video where I'll be reviewing the second book of the Agents of Chaos duology, Jedi Eclipse. See ya.